This is Super Saiyan Squeamish Sonic Lost World stage review. We're at the climax of our series now. Although this may or may not have been a flop, it is for the Sonic fan, the Sonic connoisseur, or a fan of myself or my voice. Here today we find ourselves on the final stage of Sky Road Zone. Zor riding a dragon. To keep this summary fairly short, here's what we do. We play a stage, we talk about it, discussing the highlights, how it was to play, the gameplay, details, flaws from both a player perspective and a review/critic perspective. With that being said, this is a boss fight and not a stage itself, so the details kind of vary. This is usually more where I discuss or intend to discuss the history of the boss, things I liked about it, and, of course, how it felt to encounter, fight, and achieve victory in the end. As I already mentioned, this is the final stage of Sky Road Zone. This is the Zoa boss, which we didn't get too much into the details about them in this series, so we'll leave it at that. His name is Zor, and this is a giant serpentine-style dragon, much akin to what you would see. Anyways, let's get into it.
I will show you my full strength. Maybe it's too early to kill you.
Yeah! Aced it!
Okay, so this did take a couple tries. As you can see, there is a little bit of a pattern here. You're falling from the sky, which is right off the bat a very fun mechanic. I found it super interesting as well as engaging to use that skyfall mechanic more often than once in this game. Especially being in a boss, this is fairly common for Sonic. Although it isn't the most, I guess, complicated system, it isn't quite easy. With the left and right sway and the pattern that the dragon follows, and of course the fancy lasers it shoots out, it does create quite an interesting pattern that you kind of have to navigate through, as well as allowing you to focus more on where you're going to be next than where you are in the moment, which is always fun for a Sonic game. A little bit of pre-focus strategy. With that being said, the details on this boss and the entrance are the most engaging parts of it. Out of all of the bosses, minus the cutscenes of course, as we didn't showcase them here, the entrance for this is stylish. Much like Billie Eilish? Anyways, it really does instantly put you in that like boss fight mode, and that really brings the engagement up. In terms of someone who is very interested in these kinds of encounters, that first intro is kind of the hook for these things, and it blew it out of the water. I'm not going to make another corny reference here, but it's absolutely a phenomenal way to start an encounter that also rolls right into a interesting yet just difficult enough boss fight that fits the mood and again really fills the shoes for the climax of this scenario. We're in the sky. Zor is kind of supposed to be this big bad, but of course, instead of fighting him in a very similar style to the second boss fight, we get to, well, showcase one of Sonic's biggest highlights: giant robots, and it's a dragon. Before we wrap this up, we'll move on to the details section. So as you see in this fight, the pattern is fairly simple. The dragon goes in circles, cuts through diagonally once or twice, and then segmented lasers block off the open space that you're falling through. And of course, as you've seen in many Sonic games and platformers, if you're a fellow gamer, or if this is your first game, which that is very neat, there is a circular pattern with the laser style. So that's very common, and of course it's probably the hardest part of this challenge is to go the counterclockwise way, or obviously the reverse, creating difficult windows of space, as well as putting you in the wrong position to land that homing attack when the opportunity arises. Now, with that being said, you can use the laser power, which I believe is the indigo color power. I might have gotten that wrong. I only used it once on this playthrough of mine. As you can see, it makes this a breeze, whether you're using it to dodge, catch up to the spot, avoid bad positioning, or in the instance where you run out of rings and you're terrified you won't get the next one, using it to home in on the location. It's perfect. With that being said, you also can land double the damage. Maybe it's more like 3 times as much on Zor if you land it correctly. Much akin to the Tropical Coast boss, allowing you to get a quick finish, if that's what you're looking for. Now, with that being said, my opinion on this boss in general, from a Sonic fan perspective, or I guess just as a Sonic boss in general, it's a 10 out of 10. I truthfully want to say 9, so we'll say 9. Due to the fact that it doesn't hold up to some of the more fine-tuned bosses, although it is a lot of fun, hits all the, standards of appeal, obviously. It's very, very detailed in the way it looks and cares about, its presence in the game. But it doesn't necessarily stand out like, the final boss of this game or some of the more secret bosses in some of our other Sonic titles that we'll hopefully get to. in the future. Now, from a gameplay perspective, this being my first time playing Sonic Lost World, I would rate it out probably also a 9. Maybe a 7, due to the fact that, again, it was a little tricky to get down the first time, and then obviously, as you can see, once I figured out the pattern and using the laser color power, it wasn't that hard getting that S title, but it was quite difficult to navigate properly and, well, land through. I also, again, comparing it to other experiences in Sonic Lost World and Sonic in general, it's hard to put it strictly as a 10, although that intro really is amazing. Now, with that being said, if you're a Sonic fan, feel free to like, subscribe, and share for more, and leave a comment, whether it be Sonic related to the game itself, my gameplay, things you thought about Sonic, or maybe you played this game and you have something to point out, or a mistake I made. Now, that being said, if you're not a Sonic fan, and maybe just a fan of my voice, which is weird. Oh, and don't forget, you can share if you must. You can feel free to like, subscribe, and leave a comment about whatever it might be, whether it be shenanigans, 6-7, rain rot. I try to keep out of it. We'll maybe get a community going, although Sonic fans or not Sonic fans, welcome to Sonic. Fandom? Fans? Huh. Anyways, if you're a Sonic fan, have a Sonic day, and if you're not a Sonic fan, have a day, or whatever it is you will have. With that being said, Super Saiyan Squeamish, out.
Take it easy.